One of my ancestors was famous English King Edward III, but I don't have a title. That was until the good people at Established Titles reached out. Established Titles is a project based on an historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. Purchasing as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land on the private noble estate at Edelston, Scotland, makes you a lord or lady. You will receive a unique plot number and a lovely certificate, and Established Titles also plants 1 tree with every order, and work with global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support global reforestation efforts. You could officially change your name to Lord or Lady and get it on your credit card, plane ticket, and so on. You can even get it on your dating profiles. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is now running an early Black Friday sale. Plus, if you use the code Felton, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/MarkFelton to get your gifts now and help support the channel. 10th of April 1945, Combat Command B, U.S. 3rd Armored Division entered the town of Nordhausen, Germany, to a shocking discovery. Effecting a link-up with the U.S. 104th Infantry Division, the GIs set about investigating the town. What they discovered was a large concentration camp named Mittelbau-Dora. It had been bombed by the Americans on the 3rd of April, mistakenly because its layout and concrete buildings gave the appearance of a munitions depot. The camp had been used by the SS as a dumping ground for sick and dying slave laborers employed in a vast underground weapons factory called Mittelwerk. Moving inside a long tunnel, the GIs discovered a treasure trove of high-tech abandoned by the retreating SS, freight cars loaded with V-2 ballistic missiles and many unfinished weapons, components and parts scattered through the huge subterranean lair. The find was reported up the chain of command to Colonel Holgar Toftoy, Chief of Army Ordnance Technical Intelligence based in Paris. Discussions followed, and it was decided that a secret operation would be launched to recover as much material as possible from the Mittelwerk site. There were, however, 2 problems. Firstly, the area where the underground facility was located was due to form part of the post-war Soviet occupation zone of eastern Germany. And secondly, the Americans had an agreement to share everything they found with their British allies and vice versa. But the V-2 was considered so important that damaging the special relationship with Britain was apparently worth it. To these ends, Special Mission V-2 was to strip Mittelwerk of as much V-2 material as possible, and the entire load was to be shipped straight to the United States without sharing anything with the British. Success in this operation would place the US at the forefront of ballistic missile technology for years, giving it the edge over a new enemy emerging as the old Nazi foe lay dying, the Soviet Union. But though excluded from the Aladdin's cave, the British launched their own secret program to discover the secrets of the V-2 before the US, something they keenly felt, as unlike their American ally, Britain had been on the receiving end of these terrifying rockets in a concerted German campaign to destroy London between September 1944 and March 1945. 1,402 V-2s hitting London, Norwich and Ipswich, killing 2,754 people, injuring 6,523 and destroying or damaging over 500,000 properties. The V-2, or A-4 to give it its proper designation, was the world's first long-range ballistic missile, capable of delivering a nearly 1-ton warhead up to 200 miles, using special mobile launchers. The missiles travelled so fast that no warning of their arrival was possible, making them also a terrifying psychological weapon. The V-2 was also the first man-made object to enter space, as defined by the Kármán line, and in a vertical test in June 1944, a V-2 flew to 109.3 miles, or 176 kilometers, making the world's first suborbital spaceflight. It's not hard to see why the Allied powers wanted such weapons for themselves. At Mittelwerk, where 20,000 slave laborers had perished building the infernal missiles, a special team of experts arrived, charged with stripping the place. In command was Major James Hamill, assisted by Major William Bromley, an MIT professor and special civilian advisor Dr. Lewis Woodruff. The job was immense and took time to organize. Once Germany surrendered on the 8th of May 1945, it became inevitable that the Soviets would want to take over those areas captured by the US and British forces due to form part of the Soviet occupation zone of Germany. It was announced that the Mittelwerk area would be occupied by the Red Army on the 21st of June 1945. Therefore, Major Hamel and his team would need to strip the site before the arrival of the Soviets. A large quantity of German rolling stock was rounded up, and working 24/7, the US Army sent out its first shipment from Mittelwerk on the 22nd of May 1945, consisting of 40 freight wagons loaded with V-2s and parts. Over the following 9 days, the Americans dispatched an astounding 341 freight wagons of material. In total, around 100 complete V-2s, or enough components to build as many. But the hardware wasn't that much use without the brains that designed and built it, and the Americans were also successful in this regard. Beginning on the 12th of May 1945, with the capture locally of Karl Otto Fleischer, one of the important scientists involved in the V-2 weapons project, his cooperation led to the apprehension of Walter Riedel on the 14th of May, head of the rocket motor and structural design section of the V-2 project. Chief designer on the V-2, Wernher von Braun, and his team had fled Mittelwerk before the Americans arrived, and was holed up, hoping to negotiate for themselves new lives in America and immunity from prosecution deals regarding the thousands of concentration camp laborers that had died under their supervision at Mittelwerk. One bargaining chip was 14 tons of technical and scientific documents, the entire V-2 archive, that had been hidden in an iron mine at Dorsten in Germany in early April 1945. Von Braun's group surrendered at Garmisch-Partenkirchen and was taken into US custody for detailed interrogation. In the meantime, on the 20th of May, Fleischer gave the Americans the location of the 14 tons of documents, just 1 week before this area was due to come under British occupation. The documents were sent to Paris, then shipped to the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland for detailed analysis. In the meantime, the trains kept leaving Mittelwerk loaded with V-2s and parts. They were sent to Antwerp in Belgium, in the British occupation zone, and the material loaded aboard 16 US Liberty ships that sailed to New Orleans. All this material was then sent on to White Sands in New Mexico, where the V-2 was to be tested and improved upon. A secret operation codenamed Paperclip was enacted, whereby 1,000 V-2 scientists, technicians, and their families were taken to America to populate the new US missile and later space programs, headed of course by Wernher von Braun. Needless to say, immunity from war crimes prosecution was part of the deal. So the US managed to bag most of the missiles, all of the documentation, and most of the German personnel, giving them the lead in missile technology that would eventually take them to the moon in 1969. However, the British were not quite beaten. Although the Americans allowed them to pick over what was left behind at Mittelwerk once the US operation was complete, the British did have a stroke of luck when they found an abandoned freight train in their own sector, loaded with 18 complete V-2s. They also captured some German scientists and several hundred German troops involved in firing V-2s at Britain. While Americans were shipping rockets and personnel to New Mexico, the British instituted Operation Backfire, using an old German gunnery range at Cuxhaven in the north of the country to test-fire 3 V-2s in October 1945. These tests resulted in a 5-volume technical appraisal of the V-2, which the British did actually share with the Americans. It also led to British plans to modify a V-2 missile to be the first to launch a man into space, the so-called Megarock design, about which I've made a video. See the end screen for a link. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.